Welcome, everybody, to Rebuild Illinois' Town Hall number 18. It is January 30th, 2022. We are getting closer and closer to that election. We are 156 days away from our primary, and we're doing everything we can to make sure you have all the information you need to help make Illinois something worth staying in and not packing boxes. Tonight I am joined by Teresa and Ben. I have a view here I can bring everyone up in. How you guys doing right now?
Hey guys,
So,
doing okay right now.
yeah.
We were talking earlier. I felt really sick and was wondering if I was going to be in the show, but I'm okay.
We're glad you're here, man. And Teresa, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm here.
Yeah. Good. Well, last week, just as a quick review, if you weren't watching last Sunday, episode 17, we actually covered the gubernatorial candidates. Correct? Is that right? And I think I kind of had an off day. But we went over all the positions of what Lieutenant Governor did, what the governor did, the state laws regarding how to qualify for those positions. Just the very high level. We're going to spend some time later on in future episodes actually talking about those candidates that are all in, because people are still. I think there's still time to get to end up on that ballot. So before we actually start interviewing people, we're going to wait till those all those things are in on the FEC filings. Is that correct, Teresa? I think that's the way to state it correctly.
Yeah, we're going to start digging into those FEC filings, and also another website that we can look into, which is...
Oh, well, and Jen, by the way, says you look beautiful today.
Thank you, Jen.
She needed those confirmations. So
these guys are not as helpful.
She was asking me earlier, and I'm like, yeah, you look fine.
And I was like, really? There are three things that guys don't comment about to women directly is we don't talk about your weight, we don't talk about your age,
right.
We don't talk about your looks because we want to live.
Well, luckily, I'm not right there in studio with both of you.
Yeah, I know.
You're a little bit
actually
safer
we're very fortunate, us. Mm-hmm. Although I'd love to have you out. But basically, tonight we're going to be talking about 4 other positions that are on the ballot. We will be talking. I think I have them up on the board behind me. We'll be talking about Secretary of State, Comptroller. We're going to be talking about Treasurer. I'm doing this from memory, guys. Don't make me look behind myself. Treasurer and Attorney General. And only 2 of those positions actually have 2 different Republicans running. There seems to be a slate that's being levied, which we're going to talk about that later on. I'm probably teasing it a little early, but we're gonna talk about what options there are going into these positions. And honestly, I think there's probably going to be more. I don't think we've seen the last of what's going to be on the ballot for those positions, 4 positions. But currently we have 4. And actually, hey, thank you, Rick, for joining us on Facebook. We like having you here. And make sure to tell your friends as well. The other things that we are looking for in these candidates, actually, I'm trying to remember what was the thing we were gonna do a Q&A on, because I think I have the wrong.
Well, one of them was that slate ballot we were going to talk about. The question is, so there are 4 candidates for each of the constitutional offices, and they're listed together on a petition that they're circulating as, representing themselves as a slate. So we're going to address that later on in the show.
Right, and one of the things
also,
that I go ahead.
Any other questions you have, hey,
if
think about them now, comment, put them in the comments, and we will address those later on in the show.
And let us also know where you're watching from as well. By the way, if you are concerned about election integrity, which we all are after this last election, we are also going to cover volunteer opportunities that you can take as well. one of them being poll watchers. We're going to be, so if you have questions about what poll watchers are, let us know in the comments. We will address your questions at the end of the show. Okay, so make sure to, don't be shy. Type in what you want to know about the positions of poll watchers, who they are, what they do, and how you can become one. If you have any questions about your areas where you can go, make sure to let us know who you are, and then we also can reach out to you later on as well. So make sure to stay interactive in those comments and questions. Thank you, Tammy, for joining us. Glad to have you with us. Good to see you. And then we do still we're trying to get all this done before this primary coming up on June 28th. We have the general election is on November 8th. That is 289 days away, guys. 289 days. Unreal, right? 289. But we're more interested in the 149 days to the primary, because that's where you get to pick your representatives that are going to go up against the existing, monstrosities running our state at this time. So, Ben, you have some stuff that you were going to cover in the news as well, I think. I'm going to throw it over to you.
Yep. Can you go ahead and pull that up?
Yeah, I can. So let me.
All right. So we're not a news organization. We're not trying to do that, but we do want to bring, if during the week there's anything that is of interest, we certainly want to let you know about that, so you can go out and look at that on your own. And so there we go. You see in the news just a couple things that are going on in Wisconsin. The legislature is going to vote on tougher penalties for rioters. And if you look at that in the headlines, that's not the headline that's there. It's a very biased headline, but essentially this is in the legislature. Understand that this is not going after protesters, because protesting is a right. However, as a protester, you still have to do it legally. Okay. And so they're looking at tougher penalties for people who block traffic, which is always a dangerous situation, or, cause damage to personal property or injure other people. Stephen Breyer, who's the longest serving, currently the longest serving member of the Supreme Court, has announced that he will retire soon. He's a liberal member of the court, so it's not surprised to see that he's retiring while we have a liberal president, because the president is the one that does appoint, with the advice and consent of the U.S. Senate, the next Supreme Court. Stephen Breyer, though, as far as liberals goes, he's more moderate. He was kind of toward that moderate era. I don't expect that we're going to see a moderate liberal. We're going to see a more extreme liberal, but that's part of the process. Arne Duncan is running an organization that focuses on violence in Chicago, and he recently made recommendations in a speech in a private setting dealing with violence. And surprisingly, this is coming from a very liberal individual, said that Chicago needs to put more, not less, more police officers out on the street to try to prevent that violence. There's some speculation about whether he will or will not run for mayor. He hasn't confirmed or denied, but there's a strong indication that he will run against Lori Lightfoot in the Democrat primary. The last one is the U.S. Congress. The January 6th committee has subpoenaed 14 individuals in conjunction with sending electoral college certifications. And that's one thing I think is important to follow. It's a dangerous precedent. The states are the ones that decide who they send in for that. So to see this, and again, not trying to go into depth on it, I want you to look into it and to follow it as it develops. But Yeah, the January 6th committee is now going after individuals within the states that were a part of this. So that would be the state legislatures. So that's we also not listed here, but we want to get a shout out, of course, to that gigantic convoy up in Canada.
Amazing, right?
Yeah, I know. When people get together and fight against tyranny, it's always an amazing sight.
And there's rumors that that's going to be spreading down here as well. Like now that I think the top is off of that bottle, there's a lot of people that are going to do. I hope it gets competitive.
Well, here in Illinois,
muted,
for those who don't know, Illinois is a very large central hub to the United States for all shipping. Just about everything passes through Illinois when it's going between east and west or west to east. The Chicagoland area is the central hub for all of that. So that's an important issue for us.
Right.
Yeah, right. I heard that it's going to go from California to New York or New York to California. So
awesome.
They'll be passing through here then.
Right.
And as soon as if they get someone gets something organized, I would love to be a part of it. And
it looks like Jen says it's not a rumor anymore that they have planned and then announced to end in D.C.
Yes, I did hear that, ending in D.C. And I think someone even said what they need to do is end that convoy around, because D.C. has a nice little loop around the city, and that they should just block all of that and basically make a wall of trucks.
Right.
And I think that sounds like a great idea.
They'd be arrested and charged as terrorists.
Oh, sure, of course. If we're terrorizing our
terrorists
government,
driving the streets.
Yeah, it's who are we terrorizing? We're terrorizing politicians, is what we're doing.
Well, we're terrorizing the terrorists who are stoking terror and fear in us.
Right. Well, real quick, I want to spend some time doing a little review of Town Hall 17. We did go over the gubernatorial candidates, the ones that we have currently running. We don't have any new announcements since last week. We have Darren Bailey and Stephanie Trussell running. We have Cheryl Erickson running. Gary Rabine has announced that he has Aaron Delmar running as for lieutenant governor with him. A couple of these people don't have running mates. Christopher
Cheryl's
Roper.
going to have to get a running mate real soon.
Yeah, she has one.
No, she'll need to get one.
Oh, she absolutely will.
Yeah, it needs to be on her petitions as she gets those signatures.
Right. So, Chris Roper and Alfredo, I can never pronounce that name.
Cisneros.
Cisneros, thank you.
Cisneros.
Is also got on the ballot or is working towards getting on the ballot. We have Max Solomon with Latasha Fields, which I really like Latasha a lot. I've said that before.
She is such a sweetheart.
I like Max.
I like Max too. I like them both. I think it's a really good ticket. And we have Superman here, Jesse Sullivan. I mean, he's just lacking a cape in that photograph.
Superman
I'm sorry.
pose.
Yeah, it really is. He needs a curl in the middle of his head. Here we also have Richard Irvin from Aurora. He is the mayor of Aurora. He's running with I can't read under my own slide thing. Avery Bourne. With no relation to Jason Bourne. And we also have Paul Schimpf running with Carolyn Schofield, right?
Schofield.
And I think those are all of our gubernatorial candidates that we covered
Who would you guess
last week.
amongst those are the most controversial at this? Which one, if you had to name one, would be the most controversial?
Out of those gubernatorial candidates?
Yeah.
Well, Bailey's definitely got a track record of stirring the muck. So,
But then on the other hand, this is Illinois, a totally Democrat-controlled state. So stirring the muck might be a good trait.
Well, no.
Or it could be a bad one.
I personally, and I don't want to totally I had a very long conversation with former town hall member Veritas. We spent 2 or 3 hours on the phone discussing this, and there is one of those candidates that I expect to see some mud flying at. He definitely doesn't have a really squeaky clean past. And I think that actually might be an interesting lead in to what we have to talk about today as well. When we go into our B block, we have state positions open, and we have an entire, dare I say, slate running for this, as well as a couple of, let me just share something.
Well,
In our show notes, as we design our show, I had to organize them. We'll go over these in more detail, but these guys are all on the same ticket at the moment, and we have this very interesting dynamic happen. We have a slate and we have outsiders. I think that was my note, right? So we're going to go over that and show you what that is, and it might be something to look at.
Outsiders
So
not a bad thing here.
that's right. So Ben, I think I throw it to you at this point, and you're going to go over what each of these positions are, who's holding them currently, and the requirements for those candidates.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and break in. Can you bring up my document there that's in Miro?
Sure thing.
Yeah, we have a show board that we use, and we put all the information out there. So as Christian pulls that up. So we're talking about constitutional offices today, and these are the ones that are in the executive branch that do not fall under the governor. Normally they'll work, of course, with the governor, especially if there's the same party, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily have to follow everything that the governor says, or even if the governor passes an executive order, this course, an executive edict from the King Pritzker down there, doesn't mean that they have to follow it, because they don't fall under his chain of command. They are not part of the chief executive office. They are their own offices, and there are 4 of them here in Illinois. And we start off then with the Attorney General. And as you go through here, the one thing I'd like to point out is I've included what the Constitution says about them. And you see for the Attorney General, it's very limited. Then after that, each one has a separate part in the Illinois Code of Law that addresses all the responsibilities. And I summarize that too a little bit. So the Attorney General, every state has one, and our federal government, of course, has an Attorney General, and they are essentially the chief legal officer for their respective states. Kwame Raoul right now is the Attorney General for Illinois, and under what is 15 ILCS 205. That's where if you look at that and Google that, it will pull up the Attorney General Act. Okay. And under there are 15 different duties that are listed. And I don't want to sit here and list them all. So just a short summary. Essentially, the Attorney General is the Attorney General advocates on behalf of the people of Illinois, or more to the point, the state. When we say the people of Illinois, we mean the government. Okay, so he's the chief advocate for the government of Illinois. The work with members of the General Assembly for new laws. Give advice and recommendations on how to write, or what might be good or what might not be a good policy to put into practice. That doesn't mean that the General Assembly has to take the advice of the Attorney General, but it's there, and that is a responsibility that is written into law. Of course, anything to do with any kind of litigation, especially if it goes to the Supreme Court, the Attorney General will be the one who runs the show for the state on that. And then the last one then is to litigate to ensure that state and federal laws are followed and respected. I wonder if the Attorney General will ever go after our governor. I doubt it, because they're the same party. But technically, the attorney general could go after the governor to force them to enforce the laws. All right. So
just a real quick question. Isn't that also kind of one of the hopes if we get an attorney general that represents us, the conservative constituency here in Illinois, then we do have that opportunity to have a little more of a strong arm on the government side. So.
Exactly. And so that would be that will put a check in place in our government. And that's something that we always want, our checks and balances, because that's how you restrict the unfettered access to power that these people have. If you want to ensure your own liberty, you don't let them run amok like they currently do. So let's move on to Secretary of State then. And if you'll notice, by the way, I have in there listed their order of succession to the governorship. So the Attorney General is second in line to that succession behind the Lieutenant Governor. So if something happened to the governor and the Lieutenant Governor, the Attorney General would be next. After the Attorney General, then is the Secretary of State. And you see there, the Secretary of State, one thing you should notice there is the Illinois Code. It doesn't read the same as the Attorney General Act. It says the State Records Act. So if you want to look this up, you want to Google it, put that in there, 5 ILCS 160 State Records Act, and that will get you the full information. Okay. But again, essentially, they're the chief records keeper for the state. And there are 21 different offices under the Secretary of State. That doesn't mean 21 different responsibilities, because all of these offices are going to have folks who take care of money, for example, and do other things that are just part of any organization. And some of those offices are those type. But then, so the main responsibilities come down to maintaining the Illinois State Archives, so the record of all births, for example, any proceedings from the legislature. There were.
Oh.
Ben, I think your internet went down for half a second.
Yeah, while we're waiting for him to come back, I just would explain where he said 5 ILCS 160. ILCS.
Yeah, I don't know what part I got cut off at there.
You were just going to start. You just got done covering the archives, so you're on point number 2 of IL 160.
And the ILCS is the written law, and it stands for Illinois Compiled Statutes.
Cool. Thank you for that acronym description.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, and that's important. So, like I said, if you want to Google this on your own, and you want to look for it, that's what you would Google. And you can actually find this on the Illinois legislature's website. So moving on, then, they maintain the Illinois state system of libraries. They're the one who is ultimately responsible for that. Also maintain the organ and tissue donation program, which shouldn't be a surprise because that's always part of that next little drop below. I should have put those together. The driver's license and vehicle registration. When you go into the Department of Motor Vehicles, they always ask you, do you want to be an organ or tissue donor? And so they run both of those programs concurrently. The Secretary of State, believe it or not, is responsible for the state literacy efforts. I found that very interesting in considering our really atrocious literacy rates here in Illinois. We have less than 50% of our students are at the proficient or higher mark. Less than 50%. More like 40%. Wow. Can actually meet proficiency standards for it. So they're either basic or basically they can't pass. Lastly, then, the Secretary of State, if you look, by the way, you look at all this, you'll find that if you haven't noticed, Secretary of State is sort of the catch-all for all the remaining programs that we considered. And let's throw those in executive, but where we'll put them in the Secretary of State. So the Secretary of State is also responsible for the state police.
Wow.
And it's listed as the Secretary of State Police. But that's where they reside. And of course, then the state police have, your FOID and your concealed carry and other programs. So there's a lot that's in here that I'm really not talking about. But what I want you, the viewer, to do, and why I'm giving you this information, is go take a look at it. Learn how to look this information up so you start to understand what their responsibilities are, what they're supposed to be doing, so you can become a better informed citizen to go out there and ensure that your government is doing what they're supposed to do. Okay, but understand, so that's basically a summary of then the Secretary of State. Let's go down then. The fourth in line to the governorship in the line of succession is comptroller. If we can pull that up. Here we go. So the comptroller, a lot of people don't know what a comptroller is. And I was around a comptroller and I knew what they did in terms of the Marine Corps. Essentially, they're the ones who decide where money goes in the Marine Corps, and that's an oversimplification. Any of my fellow Marine Corps veterans out there, please understand I'm trying to keep it in simple terms. But I worked an awful lot, and even then, I couldn't tell you everything the comptroller does. So we have a comptroller and a treasurer, and it sounds like, well, they both do the same thing. Well, not exactly, okay? So if you would think of this way, you keep the organization that writes the checks separate from the organization that actually issues funds against those checks. They're kept separate for the sake of accountability in the system. So the comptroller is the one who writes the checks, if you want to think of it that way. So they maintain the fiscal accounts. They keep all the budgets, and they order payments against the funds that are held by the treasurer, or they authorize payments to the treasurer. So by law, the comptroller is the state's chief fiscal control officer, responsible for the legal, efficient, and effective operation of state government. And again, you'll find that under 15 ILCS 405, the State Comptroller Act. And again, if you think of it as though they are the person who write the checks that the treasurer then cashes, that would be the best way for you to understand that. So let's turn then to the state treasurer. And this is the last of the four constitutional offices in the state of Illinois. The treasurer is fifth in line of succession to the governor. And the treasurer, like I said, they're responsible for the safekeeping and investment of monies in security deposits, and for the disbursement upon order from the comptroller. Okay, so that's what they do. And that's under the Illinois Code, 15 Illinois Code 505, the State Treasurer Act. Like I said, the Secretary of State is the only one that doesn't have an act named properly under, Secretary of State Act. It's, what do we say that one is? The State Records Act. Okay, but here, this is the State Treasurer Act. And what does the treasurer do? Well, the treasurer functions as the state's banker and investor. That's the best way to think of it. So they operate the bank, and they also make investments. And it's it's kind of a side note here to say though, but um, when the legislature decides how they are going to manage the funds, because all that is done, we'll talk about that next week, but one of the primary responsibilities with the state legislature is dealing with money, believe it or not. So they tell the comptroller and the treasurer what they're supposed to be doing. They're the ones who write the budget, and they give it to these folks to enact. Okay, but as a side note, the state treasurer is the one who's responsible for investing funds that we have in our accounts, and a lot of assumptions are made about the return on those investments. Usually, what's happened in the state of Illinois historically is they make some wild assumptions about the amount of return that we can get back on that, and it either they're making that with the treasurer, or they're making that over the treasurer's screaming and yelling, saying, "Look, guys, that's too high of an assumption to assume that we're going to get that rate of return." Historically, we make assumptions that we're going to get like an 8% rate of return on our investments, and it's been like 3 or 4%. And so a lot of the fiscal troubles we have go back to that assumption back in policy that are made in the legislature. So that's the aside. Let's I don't know if they're in that document or not, but the listed also just some of the things that the treasurer was responsible for. The
I don't see
treasurer.
that in the document, just to let you know. So,
Okay.
but if you've got other things, interested, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have to make sure I give it to you then later on. The Illinois State Treasury Office is dedicated to protecting the state's portfolio, ensuring the liquidity of all investments.
Does the state have investments?
Yes.
It's an interesting concept for me to even think about. I guess I never really considered that.
When we maintain a debt, yet we have investments.
Okay.
Okay. So some of the programs that the state treasurer is responsible for include this college savings pool, which is, that would be a section 529 under the federal government. You think of college saving account. That's what the college savings pool is. There's also something referred to as the ABLE account program, which is for, and it stands for Illinois Achieving a Better Life Experience, and it is for disabled dependents. Essentially, it's a savings plan, kind of like a medical savings plan or a college savings plan. So it earns money in a tax advantage account that is available then to spend for people with disabilities. A new program that was put under the Illinois Treasurer is something referred to as the Illinois Higher Education Savings Program. And again, this is a tax advantage plan. It's more like a prepayment for college.
Right.
Than it is a 529 savings account or investment account. So if we would think about it in those terms, that's what that does. And then the last one in my little summary here is the State Treasurer Financial Education and Savings Not-for-Profit Corporation. So this is a corporation established by the treasurer and then maintained. I guess the treasurer would be the CEO of that corporation. This is a government corporation. Then essentially they exist to educate people on financial literacy. Essentially, that's the idea behind it. So those are, if you will, in a nutshell, running through the 4 constitutional offices. That'd be the Attorney General, and that's under Kwame Raoul is the.
Yep. Here are the existing. All the Democrats that are currently holding these offices are.
They're all Democrats, unfortunately.
Yep.
Secretary of State is Jesse White. Then you see the Illinois Comptroller, who I did meet, was Susana Mendoza. And fair, I'll be fair where fair is. The Susana Mendoza did shrink the amount of deficit that's out there, unpaid liabilities, and it's kind of within that billing cycle. So every billing cycle, all of the bills are paid off, but it still represents about $5 billion that kind of sits out there. And then, of course, the last one you see, Mike Frericks is our current Illinois treasurer.
Well, thanks for giving us that rundown on what we're dealing with now. How are these people getting on the ballot? What's the requirements? Is that something you're covering, or is that something we throw to Teresa?
Okay, so that's a question. First of all, they're in line of succession to the governor, and that means that they have to meet the same requirements that the governor has to. And if you remember from last week's town hall, we talked about the governor having to be at least age 25, an American citizen, and also a citizen of Illinois for 3 years. Those are the requirements. Now, there are some additional requirements with the comptroller and the treasurer that they have to make. They have to be able to secure a bond before within 7 days of the official election results. They have 7 days to secure a bond. If they fail to do that, then the office is going to be deemed as unfilled.
Really? Do you know why that is?
The bond is to ensure that they do their job, responsibly, that they don't make a mess of things. It's not a high hurdle. It's a $500,000 bond for treasurer.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that rundown, man. I know that next up, Teresa is going to actually give us an idea of who's going to be running for all these positions coming up. So, Teresa, I'm going to throw this to you here. So,
take it away, Teresa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who's running for these things?
Well, let's start with the Attorney General. We have 2 candidates who are running on the Republican ticket. The first one is Steve.
Hold on. We're talking about Illinois candidates we're going to go through the Attorney General. Yes. We're going to go through the Secretary of State. Oh, sorry. I meant to do this the other way. Where's that? There it is. Secretary of State. We're going to go through the comptroller, and we're going to go through treasurer, and you're going to go through each of those individually. So
yes,
it's off to you at this point. Sorry.
Okay, so let's start with the Illinois Attorney General. We have 2 candidates that are running on the Republican ticket. So we'll have 2 choices, at least 2 choices in the primary. The first one is Steve Kim. He was born in South Korea, but his family moved to America when he was only 3. He's a business attorney, a former advisor to the former Illinois Governor Jim Edgar, and he advised Governor Edgar on international trade, economic development, and Asian affairs issues. He also served on the former U.S. Senator Mark Kirk's Small Business Advisory Board, and he was a Republican nominee for Attorney General way back in 2010. He was also appointed by Governor Rauner to the Illinois Human Rights Commission in 2015, and he received bipartisan approval by the Illinois State Senate. He has served on the Rules Committee of the Illinois Supreme Court. He's a husband, father, and he lives in Northbrook, Illinois. Next up is David Shistokis.
Also, quick point. Those QR codes that you see right there, you can scan those if you'd like to go to the candidate's website at any point with any smartphone that you have. So just as a note, that's what those are, in case you're wondering. Each one has one, and we're going to move on to David. So there you go.
Now for David Shistokis. He's an attorney licensed in Illinois and Florida at the state and federal levels in both states. He's a former assistant state's attorney for the Cook County State's Attorney's Office from 94 to 98. He has provided pro bono services for the homeless via the Salvation Army. He educates at-risk youth. He's a hearing officer for the Chicago Board of Elections. In 1990, he was the Republican nominee for U.S. House of Representatives to represent Illinois' 5th Congressional District. In 2016, he worked in Broward County, Florida, discovering 150,000 ballots had been opened illegally in secret behind locked doors. And just a little over a year ago, in October and November of 2020, he was in Pennsylvania as part of the Lawyers for Trump team, and he testified before the Pennsylvania Senate Committee hearing in Gettysburg. Side note, I actually happened to be watching that and was a little shocked to see David Shostokis on there. And I said, wait a minute, I know him. Now, he's also been involved in elections and election law for over 30 years, including working with Judicial Watch as counsel in the case of Illinois Conservative Union versus Illinois State Board of Elections. He has authored 2 books. One is Creating the Declaration of Independence, which I actually have a copy of. And the second one is Constitutional Sound Bites. He's a former radio host and a professor. Now I think we're ready for the Illinois Secretary of State candidates. The first one is John Milhiser. He's a former state and federal prosecutor. For 16 years, he served as the state prosecutor in Sangamon County's state's attorney's office. And then from 2018 to 2021, he was a U.S. attorney for the Central District of Illinois, and he was unanimously confirmed by the U.S. Senate. Now, in his early life, he grew up in a military family. His father was a career Air Force officer, which is why he moved around quite a bit. But he's been living in Illinois for over 25 years. He's a former adjunct professor at Springfield College in Illinois / Benedictine University. He currently teaches high school government, history, and English at Lawrence Education Center in Springfield, Illinois. And he's been married for over 24 years, and they have 2 daughters. The next candidate is Dan Brady. He is currently an Illinois state rep since 2001. And just a few highlights, and the more recent highlights since he's been a state rep for over 20 years. Some of the more recent bills, he has sponsored repealing the FOID Act. And for any of you gun owners out there, you know that we have a FOID Act here in Illinois. He sponsored a bill to repeal that. He has also sponsored a bill to form the Domestic Violence Task Force. And he also sponsored a bill that makes it unlawful for employers to require their employees to be vaccinated against COVID-19. So this gentleman actually supports vaccine choice and not the mandates. He's a former McLean County coroner, and he's a funeral director by trade. He lives in Bloomington, Illinois, and is married with 2 children. Now we're moving on to the comptroller. Now we only have 1 candidate on the ballot right now, or as far as we know, and that's Shannon Teresi. She is the McHenry County auditor since 2018, and during her tenure as the auditor, the audits by her office have resulted in criminal investigations, employee terminations, and countless process improvements. So she has been cleaning up corruption. And she's a certified public accountant, a certified fraud examiner, and a certified internal auditor. She lives in Crystal Lake, Illinois, and is married with 2 children. And then finally, we have the Illinois State Treasurer. We only have 1 candidate that we know of so far that's going to be on the ballot, and that's Tom Demmer. He's an Illinois state representative and has been since 2013. He co-founded the Children's Health Caucus and helped lead the investigation into former House Speaker Michael Madigan. He was also the director of innovation and strategy at KSB Hospital, which is a nonprofit community hospital. He's a former White House intern that interned in the office of the Vice President of the United States. He grew up in Illinois. He currently lives in Dixon, Illinois, and he's married with 2 children. Now, I know that Christian mentioned a little earlier that there's some candidates that are making up a slate, and then we have a few outsiders. The slate of candidates are actually Steve Kim for Attorney General and John Milhiser for Secretary of State, and then the comptroller candidate Shannon Teresi and the treasurer candidate Tom Demmer. Now, they actually do have their petitions out there on their websites, and they're all listed. It's a combined, there it is. It's a combined petition. So to sign, you are signing for each one of them. And we're still wondering how legal that is.
Actually, I think Ben had some feedback. He said that was perfectly acceptable. Probably not something he would attempt.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then,
so we were going to get to that in section D. We'll talk about that a little bit more.
Okay.
Okay. And then, of course, we have the two outsiders, which is David Shostokis and Dan Brady are considered the outsiders that are not part of that pre-designated
approved slate. Yeah. Yep. So, well, it's not even so much an approved. It's just someone is running them all together that we can tell so far.
And
For all we know,
who is watching them? Who is running them together?
That is
Who's
the question.
funding it? Yeah,
Right.
that does tend to come up as a question. Now, it's something we can talk about a little bit later. Whereas later now, are we here?
I don't know. I mean, if you want to jump into that, I think it's a fascinating question. Unless you want to jump right into the poll watcher stuff, or do we leave them with that and discuss this slate issue?
I think we might want to discuss the
watch.
slate issue real quick.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's go ahead and do that.
All right. So, thoughts, guys? What I think there's a
Okay.
little digging on Teresa's part, but I'm going to
Well-
let you guys.
Well, I looked in the Illinois State Board of Elections materials on it, and there's nothing that is. In fact, I posted an official answer from the State Board of State Board of Elections. Sorry, not education. State Board of Elections did answer the question specifically and say that you can run as a slate. Which means you can have more than one candidate as long as obviously they're running for more or less non-competing positions.
Right.
So having it, you wouldn't have two running for attorney general on that slate.
Well-
You would have, in this case, we have one for each of the 4 constitutional offices.
It's a little bigger than that. This is actually posted on their social media. Let me share that real quick.
Well,
We have found that
I
if you
ran
go to
into.
Tom Demers' Twitter account, it's in combination with Richard Irvin and Amy Bourne.
Yes, and
So
one of the
that's
things
their
that
full
I
slate.
found when I was researching the candidates, one of the things that I found was there was some talk and rumor that there is a billionaire here in Illinois by the name of Ken Griffin who has decided he has made statements that he's going all in this election and that he's going to have a slate of candidates. Since this is the only one that's really running as a slate, a lot of people are reporting that this is Ken Griffin's slate. Now, I tried to look into their FEC filings. Well, not for that, it wouldn't be FEC. For those, it would be through, is it Sunshine, Illinois, or Illinois Sunshine?
I think it's Illinois Sunshine. Yeah.
Illinois Sunshine.
Illinois
And
Sunshine.
I looked through those. I could not find any money linking Ken Griffin to any of these candidates, but there is that rumor out there. So this
Which,
is something.
by the way, if anybody has any leads, please let us know in the comments or send us an email at info or at rebuildillinois.org at gmail.com. I'll put that link up later. But yeah, if anybody has any information, let us know.
And the reason why this is kind of important is because we have spent decades watching Michael Madigan put up certain candidates, and even if another Democrat wanted to run against his pick, that candidate could never get any traction because he outspent them. And this made Michael
This looks
Madigan
like that.
basically a kingmaker. And now if this Ken Griffin, he may be a great guy, I don't know. But it's just, you have to make the decision on, first of all, we need to figure out if he's doing this slate, and if he is, do we really want some rich guy picking our candidates for us?
Yeah, there are some questions of this. Like, so why would we see a slate of individuals? And is this to help bolster somebody who's politically a little weaker than the others? So that, and the way it works is running as a slate, really you're still going to vote for all of them individually. Okay. So you're not going to say, well, check the box and I'm voting for all 4 or all 6 of those individuals. It's 4 in this case because the petition has just the 4 constitutional offices on it. There you go. And you see how it is. so the first question that comes up is, well, why are they doing it this way? Because um, it's just unusual. Let me say it that way. It's unusual. It's perfectly legal, in the Illinois State Board of Elections has said as much, um, but it does present that opportunity to question why they would do that. Furthermore, um, it also creates an opportunity for opposition, and opposition doesn't just mean um, um, primary opposition. It could be uh, the left going after them as well, where instead of eliminating one candidate, they can eliminate four in one fell swoop. If there's something wrong with these petitions, if they did something, they didn't get them certified, or, they, bad signatures, or whatever, all these candidates are set to lose together. So they would either rise together or fall together as far as getting their name on the ballot. And that's a dangerous proposition. So it's more effort to go out, kind of more effort. I mean, because, as a precinct committeeman, I mean, I carried around multiple different petitions. And yes, you have to ask people to sign each one for each separate candidate. And, it's convenience thing, where people just say, well, I'll sign four of them, or, I'll sign two of them. So yeah, certainly it's more convenient to get signatures where one signature now counts for all four, instead of having to sign four times for four candidates. But like I said, then if they get enough of their signatures challenged, first of all, I believe it's 30. If 30% of a page is successfully challenged, the whole page is thrown out. So you just lost all the signatures on it. Also, if there's anything wrong with like I said, with circulator, the entire page is thrown out. So you're putting four candidates at risk of being tossed out together instead of individually. Also, it's a much more lucrative target to go after in terms of money, bang for your buck, because it costs money for people. They hire law firms to go after these individuals, after candidates that they decide to go after. There was a law firm that pulled my petitions when I ran for state senate. They ultimately didn't challenge me, but they could have if they wanted. Now, a law firm might pull this and say, for the same money we would spend for getting rid of one candidate, now we can get rid of four. That's why I personally don't think it's the best idea to do this, despite the fact that it is perfectly legal to do. It just opens up, if you will, opportunities for the opposition to really do some damage to you. And
it's very easy to challenge that for very little money, because if you're challenging one of them, all you have to do is copy your challenge for one of them and just copy it four times, and now you challenge four of them.
You don't even have to do that, because they're all four together on the same petition. You're challenging the petition, not the candidate.
It's risky to be on that. So if one of them gets challenged, all of you are at risk.
All at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you have
kind
it.
Of ballsy.
Yeah.
I think that's the way I would
make sure that they've got their stuff right on this, or but even if they do have it right, it does open up those questions of
who's behind it.
Yeah, what's going on here? Why are we seeing this unusual method for this now?
Especially when I'm going to tell you, I think all of us are friends and know David Shestokas. It's odd to see him. I'd be curious that when we get him into studio here to find out what his opinion on that slate is.
Yeah, it kind of.
And to be sure, we don't know any of these individuals on that slate, so
right.
We're not talking good or bad about them. We're just talking about
the fact that they're grouped.
The fact that it's out there.
When it's grouped together like that, it reminds me of like a puppeteer
Yeah.
pulling the strings, and that
Yeah.
there's some it even if it may not be anything like that. It may not, but
It raises eyebrows, I think, is the way we
raises
would
those
put it.
eyebrows. Like, who is organizing this group? And Ben and I both know from running for different offices, campaigns are hard. And when I got into my campaign, I didn't really know anyone when I first started, and that's how I got connections and stuff. So by the time I was done with that first run, I had a lot of friends that I knew politically, and we actually started coalescing, especially after the primary, and we would do press conferences together as a
Right.
group. But that's after we went through the primary. This is the very beginning, and they've already coalesced into a group.
Right.
Oh yeah.
It's weird.
Well, that's like, we talked about the three amigos. When I was running for state senate, we had Eric Wallace, myself, and
Tom.
Tom McCullough. The
Yeah,
three of us were
The
at
three of you were
events.
joined at the hip when I met y'all.
Right. Everywhere, if there was an event, especially public speaking event, we tried to invite each other to it to get out. But we didn't run as a slate.
Yeah, and
because
there was I did the same thing with one of the other candidates, which I'm not going to mention because it's one of our gubernatorial candidates. But we did get some signatures for our I think it was more so because we were doing precinct committee. No, we were not only doing our regular slate, for Congress for me, and also for him for his office, but it was delegates. We did a combined one for delegates for the presidential election.
Well, and I think the reason that we bring this up at all is the fact that we're all very sensitive to any form of corruption, whether it's on what we consider to be our side, I guess, conservatives, or on the Democratic side. We don't want any corruption in our elections, which is, I think a good segue to start talking about our opportunity for you guys, if you've had questions about becoming poll watchers.
Yeah,
as well. So
it's time to switch over here.
Yeah, let's Ben. Why don't you tell us about what's going on with poll watchers here in our electoral process?
Okay, well, people will ask, well, what's a poll watcher versus an election judge? Okay, so they're two different things. An election judge is somebody who has been appointed that position, and they have some actual official power to make determinations based, on signatures and people's whether or not they actually have the right to vote. Essentially to determine whether or not that person is who they say they are, they live what they say they live, etc. A poll watcher is a little bit different, and these are the watchdogs of your elections, and these are the ones who are there. Well, both. You would hope that both are there to keep the election process honest, but the poll watchers are, excuse me, my nose is itching. Poll watchers are your volunteers. They're not getting paid to be there. And typically they'll come in for a few hours until they're replaced by somebody else, but they're there to monitor the whole process, and they monitor the judges and the voters themselves. As a poll watcher, the main difference is you're not allowed to interfere with the process whatsoever. You can challenge you can challenge a potential voter or a vote, but you have no say in whether or not your objection is sustained. The election judge is going to be the one that does that. And each polling place has a chief election judge who ultimately is going to be the one to do that. So who puts these volunteers into the polling places? Well, typically it's your political parties will do that, and they're trying to coordinate efforts for all of their candidates so So Republicans and Democrats or Libertarians can do that. Essentially, they will appoint somebody as a poll watcher and give them some credentials with the signature on it to go in there and do it. Also, candidates can do that. Candidates can appoint poll watchers in all of the voting precincts for which they are a candidate, and send them in. And again, then other political organizations like watchdog organizations that are registered can do the same thing. They can have volunteers go in with their credentials and participate. And they have, and I apologize for looking this way, but they can, some of the things that poll watchers can do, they can ensure that, the ballot box is empty before it begins and, nothing is added after the fact. You have the right to position yourself close enough that you can actually observe the process. So if an election judge tells you, no, you must stand over there, look, the State Board of Elections, and we can actually put on our website the State Board of Election pamphlet that talks about poll watchers. State Board of Elections says that I have to be close enough to observe signatures and addresses, etc., for these individuals.
Well, and the real thing is that this is something that you can do, the way that you can be involved to actually ensure that we actually are maintaining our election integrity. This is a position
Anybody,
that there's supposed to be like a balance to the watchers, right?
Yeah, if you're a registered voter, you can be a poll watcher. Okay, same thing. If you're a registered voter, you can be an election judge. Okay, so the only requirement.
Would you say that a lack of poll watchers led to what we saw in the 2020 election?
Absolutely.
And a lack of conservative election judges. Like I explained, I think it was last week, in our urban areas, a lot of our major cities, we don't have anywhere near enough Republican election judges, but they have an overabundance of Democrat ones. So they'll tell some of those Democrat election judges to just check the box for Republican. And you have many polling places that don't have any Republican judges. It's just a bunch of Democrats with half of them with just the Republican name on their name tag. That's it. So that's why it's so important that we have people this time and every time hereafter be there to watch the election cycle, our poll watchers. So one of the other thing is, it states in here that they have the right to witness the actual counting of the ballots for the elections. Okay, so after the polling place closes, the judge can't kick you out until they're actually, like, everything's boxed up and gone. We're allowed to have poll watchers watch through the entire process.
And that's something that anyone could do if you're a registered voter.
Again, that doesn't mean you interfere with the process. You don't tackle a judge or a voter. Okay.
Right.
But
you're watching and observing so that you could testify in court later if you need to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You are the eyewitness.
Also, one of the things that is very useful is, as you're going through, you would keep track of, who's voted potentially, and let your party know, hey, we still have, this list of individuals who said they were going to vote but haven't voted. Why is that important? Because then it's called a get out the vote effort. They'll call the people and remind them, hey, please come out and vote. Essentially, that's, today's the day. Do you need a ride? It's not to harass them. It's to remind them that, hey, this is the big day, and to offer them assistance that they needed. and so that again is something that a poll watcher can be very useful for a party or a candidate's campaign. So understand then that poll watchers, these volunteers, if they're there for an hour or they're there all day, it's a great help. Oftentimes, it's one of the hardest things for candidates to do because we got so many other things that we're trying to do that we need the volunteers in place to do. And your participation in this process will help us to ensure that we have a fair and free and an election with integrity versus what we had this last time.
Christian's muted.
We do not hear you, Christian.
I said thank you for that intro on that. I know that I plan to do the same thing in my precinct. I know I've become friendly with the poll watchers that we've had over the past couple of years, and it's something that it's a necessary thing. I mean, there are areas that don't have enough, that don't have equal representation on both party lines. If there's no one there to ensure that this is correct, then what can happen if someone's not there? I mean, we all need to chaperone this thing a little better.
Well, and I believe when I did the numbers on this, if we had 1% of the people who voted for Trump, who was the Republican candidate in 2020, if we would have had only 1% of the people that voted for him also being either election judges or poll watchers, that would be 3 sets of eyes on every single polling place in the entire country. But remember, when it came to the Revolutionary War, I think it was only about 3% of the people that actually were fighting. So if we multiply that by 3 and only 3% of the people who voted for Trump were signed up for election judges and poll watchers, we would have 9 sets of eyes on every single vote being cast. So that would have saved us a huge headache, but we had almost nothing.
So how do people become poll watchers?
It's important enough for you to be involved and make sure your vote is going to count.
Yeah. So the best way to become a poll watcher is to don't wait for somebody to ask you. Reach out to your precinct committeeman, all right, or to a candidate. You can go to any of the candidates' website and send them a message. Say, hey, I'd like to be a poll watcher. Or you can also do it to the parties. Send a message to your county's party website or your township's party website and say the same thing. I would like to be a poll watcher. Can you help me get ready for that? Or and trust me, they're going to fall over themselves to get you involved and to get you ready to do that. And they're going to be just especially thankful for your participation in what we all take for granted and has been shown we've taken it for granted for far too long. So understand that that's the best way to contact them. Like I said, if you know your precinct committeeman, reach out to them, on Facebook, on Twitter, whatever, or through a phone number, give them a phone call, an email. But don't wait for somebody to ask you. That's the important thing to remember here. Reach out to them in one of those manners.
Great. And I think Teresa's got homework for us now.
Coming from the homeschooling mom. Yeah, I guess that would be my job. Okay, so what can you do with all this information? Well, the first thing to do is to go to the candidates' websites. We gave you those QR codes. If you missed it, go ahead and rewatch this and zoom to that area so that you can click that and go to their websites. They are certainly circulating those petitions right now. So on each of their websites, they have a link that says petitions. Click that, and then you'll be able to download it. However, I would advise that you let the candidates know that you're circulating petitions so that you're not circulating petitions in an area where they already have someone circulating petitions. So that way you don't end up with double signatures.
And we will have information at the rebuildillinois.org website as well.
Right.
And you can find us also on Telegram if you need to get a hold of somebody on what to do.
And if you're not sure about circulating petitions and what that's all about, go ahead and take a look at our Town Hall 15 where we discuss that. Another thing you can do is contact your county Republican chairperson about open positions for precinct committee persons, election judges, and poll watchers. And you might want to review Town Hall 16, which kind of went over some of those. And sign up to be an election judge or a poll watcher. The election judge was covered in Town Hall 17. And remember, I know it seems like a lot of people will say, I just don't have the time. Being an election judge or a poll watcher, usually it's just a one-day thing. Now, when we have early voting, I think you can sign up and only do it for certain days. Don't quote me on that, but it's well worth your time, especially if you have a job where you have paid time off and you can take election day off and be an election judge or a poll watcher. You're still going to get paid for it, but at least you're there and ensuring election integrity so that we can make sure everything is free and fair and that nothing can be stolen from us. And we won't see all of the problems that we saw in 2020.
Well, thank you. Thanks for
That's
that
all
information.
I have for homework, but that's a lot.
No, it's plenty. And a lot of that information we will have as well. Like I said, we will have it on our website. I've been working on it actively still. Teresa and I will be actually trying to put the finishing touches on that here this Tuesday. So, but you can get to that here at rebuildillinois.org, right down below. As well as we do have a Linktree account that has an updated list of every place on Telegram as well as online that there are conservative Illinois groups that are trying to do the best to preserve a fair and equal election this time. And we also do have a lot of pretty active conversation on our Telegram group as well. And if you have anything else that you want to send to us or any other questions, you can email us at rebuildillinois.org at gmail.com. I realize it's a .org and a .com, but it works. Trust me, it works. Feel free to drop us a line at the email here. As far as what's going on next week, I wanted to talk about we are going to have we're gonna spend some time where we talk about Illinois state senators and Illinois state representatives. And we're also going to touch a bit on campaign finance as well. So. Looking forward to actually spending some time with you next week. Same place, same time, 7:00, and make sure that you tell people that we are doing this. All of our shows are being backed up as well on Rumble and on Odyssey, so check them out, share them with people. Make sure that we have the most informed electorate that we've ever had this year. So. I'm very thankful that you took the time out of your day to spend with us, and we look forward to seeing you next week. I'm going to play you guys out. Is there anything else you guys want to add before we part for the day?
No, hey, thank you all for participating with us, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
Take care, guys. You're all wonderful.
Alive and well, I'm wide awake. Won't take your brand, I'm not your slave.